It's a long tune.
It's okay. It's okay. It's great.
Thank you.
Yay.
Hey,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Haakon Graf, and that was great.
thank you.
Wow, that was really great. Great, just great music. Really great music.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. We met a couple of years ago in Bakersfield, remember?
I do remember. We had met
Yeah.
before that, I think, but
Oh, yeah.
I think you came to Bar Fedora too, didn't you? When I was booking that place downtown, you came there.
Yes.
Did you play there?
Yes. I
Yeah,
never
you
played there, no.
really? Because I thought, now that I'm thinking about it, I thought you played with a group there. No?
It's so long time ago, and I can't say I remember. I can't say. Maybe I did. Maybe I did.
Yeah, I can't
Maybe,
totally
but maybe
remember, but
you're,
I feel like I did.
maybe you
Maybe Saturday
remember
or
the,
something. Yeah.
the theater that you came to. I did the theater play with Monjongo Jackson and his wife, Iona Morris,
Oh,
and Marianne Alda. They had like a female midlife
wasn't
perspective
that
on life.
wasn't that called Moist?
It was.
That was a great play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that twice. I forgot that you were the drummer. I mean, the piano player, the
Yeah.
synth player. I forgot that. I admit that. Yeah, so we had come across each other, and then Bakersfield, when I did the workshop, that was like 3 years ago or something, and you came and you played, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, man, Haakon, right? Wow.
Yeah.
So, and my first
Yeah.
question is, how does a boy from from Oslo,
Yes.
right, end up in
Yeah.
Bakersfield? How does that happen?
Exactly. That's a that's a book. You know, it's first I got a grant. Excuse me. I got a grant from Norwegian composer organization in 2004, and I wasn't good at applying for stuff like that. They have a good support system in Norway, culture wise, and both to the Copyright Bureau, which is a lot in Norway. I have to say this as an introduction because people in Norway, at least the contemporary jazz people, have learned that when you compose your own music and you play it live, and you report it into the Copyright Bureau, like it should be done everywhere in the world, you get cash back.
Okay.
You get cash back from playing your own music live.
Yeah.
And that are little streams of fundings from everywhere into this pool of a fund, which is connected into all the little gadgets we have now with stores that play music to attract customers, little gadget that plays music like the phones we have, and all of these things. They pay a little tax. This is microscopical tax, and all of that money gets into a pool when you can't report who's playing what. It's just a lot of music being used for different reasons, many commercial reasons. So anyway, that pool, part of that pool is for people like us that are playing our own music and traveling around, and when we report it and they're registered and everything is done legit, we get a little cash, a kickback. So that stimulates people to be original instead of being, like I heard since I was a kid, we have to play music that people like, And I never understood that because I had kind of like a special upbringing. We didn't have TV in the house, and my mother was a very classical oriented, musically oriented person. And so it's a long story, but I'll make it short. She used to play classical music. She was a violinist. Her father was a professional violinist, very good one. So she played violin, she played everything, piano, guitar, accordion, whatever. But when she put on classical music, it was like you watch a movie. And she would put drawing paper on the table and crayons and tell us we were 4 siblings at the most. But before that, before it was only me and my sister 2 years younger, and my brother 5 years younger. They're both deceased. Rest in peace. Unfortunately, cancer took them. But anyway, we're sitting around the kitchen table. She would play this music and say, draw and paint what you see. And she would tell the story if it was the 4 seasons or this and that, She knew the story behind the whole composition, the composer on all of this. And it was so vivid and, like a 3D movie, like we saw, So when it came to the popular world outside, I wasn't allowed to listen to rock and pop music. It was, horrible to her, and to us, music was the same as the food you eat. So you get influenced by it, and so it's healthy. And then she was a fanatic Christian Baptist. She kind of slid into that part of mental or religious interest, and put a lid on her whole creativity, which wasn't good for her. So, but the like the Indians in India, they break it all the way down to what is sound. It's a certain amount of vibrations in air per second, right? 440, 442, whatever. There's been a big debate on what is the correct main tuning of, the piano or whatever. What is the set standard, like ground zero, 338 for a while. And the Germans kicked it up to 440, and now it's 442, 444, because it hits you air, and the air has this vibrational thing that ends up sending that vibration into your body where there are glands for biochemistry production. So it is, your body produces a certain biochemistry, a certain juice for certain levels, and it influences your mind and your feelings. So just take the major triad chord, do, da, 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 called happy chord, do, da, 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 sad. We can feel it right away. It's incredible. And she would go, this is God, no, this is destructive music. I don't want kids to be drawn into that. You know, they used to harass Frank Zappa back in the day for having horrible music and horrible lyrics that would destroy the American youth. And, you know, censorship, you know. So in all of that kind of mixed, I grew up and I was mad because I wanted to, I discovered a guy when I was 12, I think, called Jimmy Smith, who played an organ sound that was just grabbing me, like,
Yeah.
just changed my life.
Yeah.
Before that, or simultaneously, I heard a tenor saxophone player on the radio, which I think was John Coltrane. I can't find anybody else. But that was like a revelation for me. I wanted to play tenor saxophone. That was my call. My grandfather, the violinist, said, no, tenor saxophone is not a real instrument. You can't play that. It's a phony little thing that, you know, circus and silliness and whatever. No. So that was a devastating moment. But then I heard the B3, Hammond B3, and Jimmy Smith play enormously creative and on fire bebop. They're like hard bop, and also beautiful music with these new albums with Wes Montgomery. I love that. Very young, I was like listening to those records in record bars, in stores. I couldn't listen to it at home. I wasn't allowed to have those records because Jesus could come back, and then if one of those records were in the house, it would go to hell forever and forever and forever. You know, like.
Oh
So,
boy.
yeah, that was the reality. So
Uh,
I knew they were crazy, but I knew that I had to pursue what made meaning for me, and that was it.
yeah.
I would listen to Wes Montgomery, Jimmy Smith, and Oscar Peterson, not so much because it was kind of like a more conform, arpeggio-based
Yeah.
playing. You know, it was easy to break down, but it was impressive technically, of course. But later it expanded to more, what shall I say? I started working in a music store, and people came to me and said, "Do you want to join our band?" And I said, "What type of music do you play?" "Well, I'll play all the best, like Led Zeppelin, Uriah Heep, and Deep Purple." I said, "No." And they were blown away because I said, "Well, why do you play that music? They're already playing. There's no variations. There's no interplay. There's no nothing. Like, why would you play? There's a band that plays their own music. Why would you do that again?"
Huh.
And honestly, I didn't get it. So I said, "Huh?" I said, "I can try to make some original music and see how it goes." But I was basically not so interested in rock. I have to let the pool monster cool down for a little bit.
Right. That's his pool monster is cleaning his pool.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Every
just
so
renting, but it's annoying enough.
yeah.
But hey, you stop me. I'm just talking, but you stop me, Cathy. What do you
No,
want to
no,
know?
no. Well, this is exactly what I'd ask you anyway, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's really an interesting way that you came up, um, and I have to say it's not a story that I've heard so often. I've heard very lots of stories, obviously, but Your story is unique. So anyway, so you decided you were gonna try and play some original music at that point.
Yes,
That was pretty early,
yes.
right? You were pretty
Yeah,
young.
well, actually, I took classical lessons, and that was my safety, safe zone. I was sent to this beautiful lady who had a house with the apple trees and everything, and I would play pieces, from Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart, pretty standard classical pieces for that age group.
Yeah.
It was a book called Krenslin, Richard Krenslin book. But I was so nervous and neurotic due to my home surroundings that I couldn't really find peace to practice. So it was more, I was just absorbing the music. I absorbed it in a way that um, I came to my teacher one day, I remember, and you could say I had like some type of agoraphobia because I was surrounded by people who would scream all day and shout hallelujah and be grateful for that Jesus would come back any moment. And for them, the Jesus come back was like so we can get away from this horrible place called the earth, and life on earth wasn't worth living. And I see that today that's destroying a lot of people, because they destroy the connection between the now and the future. You make planning for the future an offense towards God. So because you're supposed to be in heaven, remember? Why are you making plans or earthly plans and you have money and you have to pay this and blah, blah, blah? So it's a toxic sabotage of the life energy, and be happy to be alive and to plan for tomorrow and, whatever, live. So when so I went out of the house to go to this piano teacher. That was like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And I got there, and she would say, one time I remember specifically because I was so neurotic and nervous. And she would say, "Well, play the piece that I had from last time," and I played it. Book was up. I saw the music, but it's kind of like it came from inside. And then she said, "Well, thank you, blah, blah, blah." And so she played, "This is the piece I want you to play and look at for the next time, next piece." And she played it one time, and I couldn't see the music. It was just a blur. So I asked her, "Can you please play it one more time?" And she did. Then I went up. I didn't know. I didn't think. I didn't know what happened. I said, "Oh, okay." And I played it back to her. But she was blown away. But I felt like it was a download.
Yeah.
I got a download into music. And that's back to that imprint where the Indians actually have scales for a lot of different occasions where they make your body and your mind ready for a certain thing by putting the waves in there so it produces the biochemistry needed. They have for morning raga, they have scales for eating, appetite, and they have for, before a wedding, in the middle of a wedding, after a wedding, an evening or whatever. So it's incredible. And another kind of interesting, scary part is like music. There's a company that was making music for commercial, like for corporations. Um,
I can see the handwriting on the
what?
wall.
Yeah, exactly. They would. I don't remember the name of that first main company now, but anyway, they had psychologists and everything to measure the the group of people, the social psychology, common traits of the employees,
Yeah.
how to make their work more efficient,
More
and to have
productive. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they would have music, and they would maybe have like a Beatles medley where they would go before lunch. They would put on a Sergeant Pepper thing with snare drums and militant, you know, to because the curve was like a down a half an hour, 40 minutes before lunch. It went down to 15% from like 82, right? So they would put on that and it would pick up. You can stamp a couple of, you can lick a couple of more stamps, Cathy, you know? So yeah, I was like
Yeah,
in that
that's
world,
fascinating.
and
That's
that music was the only very.
yeah.
So coming from that, I felt more or less what people were playing about, I would say. So I understood that the blues was a very authentic Black American expression. And I felt why I felt the pain, I felt the sorrow, the complaining or the outlet of agony. And but we had in Norway, my grandfather, my mother's father was the head of because he couldn't continue playing violin. He had like three what you call trigger fingers.
Oh yeah.
He had some kind of thing growing the wrong way, and he had to stop playing professionally.
Oh.
He was very good. There was what do you call it? When you write about somebody in the paper, you call it res.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, he got good critics from his solo debut. There was a Norwegian violinist 100 years before him called Ole Bull. Ole Bull was a great, like Edward Grieg-ish. Uh, anyway, they said we haven't heard any better since Ole Bull,
Oh.
and it has an ocean view in his tone.
Huh.
So blah blah blah. When he said something, it was kind of the law.
Yeah.
But I lost my track right now.
Well, you were talking about basically what you came out of, and you were
Yeah.
talking about the blues particularly.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, the blues, folk music,
Yeah.
folk music, very important.
Yeah.
Folk music is, and every country and every culture has a folk music, which is interesting, based on their geographically, location, what they could make instruments out of. But life usually was the same, food, love, shelter, safety, group versus individual, family, kids. But most you common in folk music was there was a bigger group than the family. It was the village. So it would have different dialogues and call and response towards the individual. And coming back from a hunt or talking about a weather condition that would be dangerous or good or whatever it was. And we can see that coming from Africa into other cultures. You can see how that has influenced. You can see it in the church, the Black Baptist Church. You can see it in Afro-Cuban music when the singer, the sonero, is talking about first the story, the verses and the chorus, and then going into the tumbao, where it's like they talk about a compressing of the whole situation. It could be a question, it could be a statement, and the group answers. Group Guantanamera, Guantanamera, a honest, good-hearted car bus driver is trying to get it on with a woman from Guantanamo, and she's tricking him and being kind of mean to him. So it's like Guantanamera, he says, so no, but that's sincero, right? I'm an honest guy. Why, blah, 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 blah. So that kind of thing is part of the folk music. But in Norway and Sweden and Denmark, when you go farther east into Russia, they have their own scales. They have their own expression of melancholy and sadness. They don't have the pentatonic major or minor scale with the flattest six sometimes, bo ba bo ba bo ba ba bo. They have actually a Lydian do da da do da da do da do da 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 do da da do da da do da 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 bo ba bo ba bo ba ba bo ba ba ba. So it's both a major third, but it has a raised fourth. So it makes it both sad, sadly positive,
Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah. So I grew up with that. And they have a violin called the Harding violin. Harding means it's a place, it's a valley up there with the fjords. And they have underneath the four strings, which is tuned traditionally, there's a bed of resonance strings, just like in the sitar. So there's a bed of strings which is tuned in the nature overtone range, which is fourth and fifth and whatever. I don't even know. I don't know the specifics, but I know there's a nature tuning. And when they play, that would resonance like a beautiful bed of ambience underneath. And in the midst of all of that, I felt that instead of expressing my sadness, which was real life sometimes, I tried to brighten it, and but I didn't go silly. So when a rock band, heavy band, came to me and said, "We want to join our band," I said, "No. Well, we can try to make some more original music," and that's what we did. The band's name was Rufus with a PH. We had no idea about the Chaka Khan or Rufus at the time. This band was established before Chaka Khan got it on with that Rufus name. A couple of years later, before in the late 70s, 60s.
Yeah.
But I made some music for them, for the band that was kind of in the combination of what I could tolerate, which was like I heard Emerson, Lake and Palmer. That was familiar, with the classical preferences. And then I heard some Stevie Winwood. I liked Spencer Davis Group because it was kind of jazzy, bluesy, and preference to the more mellow part of the Jimmy Smith preferences I had. So whatever, I got right in the middle there and made some music, which the bass player recorded the rehearsals for on a tape recorder, and then he took it to the radio station, which in Norway is kind of like a BBC thing, state run, whatever. He took it there. It was a special program that had, current groups and stuff. And he got a 30-minute radio program, and he got the tape from that. So we launched everything we had of instruments and everything, and what recorded live in the radio station. And then he took that to Polydor, the Norwegian branch office, and was signed on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Polydor, a record artist,
interesting.
17 years of age.
Wow.
And I even thought that he was a little, it was kind of like uncomfortable for me that he ran around representing what I had made, so it was my music, how dare you type of thing. I was, hey, I got a record contract. Well, okay, because that was like hangovers from my mother's, that whole religious.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna go out to the world and blah blah blah,
And you were only 17. I mean, you weren't that far away from home. home life, right? And
Right.
you were
So
still living at home probably too, right?
no, she kicked me out
Oh,
into the snow because she met a group of what they call themselves children of God, American hippie, strumming guitars like Kumbaya, my Lord kind of thing. They were in the streets,
yeah.
and she met them, and they were like a meaning, whatever. So she filled her house up, her basement of these people, and I protested because she came to me for rent, and they
Wait,
didn't pay any
wait
rent.
a minute. This is your mother?
Yeah.
So she filled up the basement basically with hippies. She allowed a bunch of hippies, and she was already into her strong Christian thing that you were describing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So meeting them in the streets, oh, that was a sign. That was meant to be, right?
Oh,
So she
interesting.
changes her name to some type of religious name, and then um, they're all over down in the basement. There's this 3-story townhouse type of thing. So basement, then the first floor, kitchen, living room, back door out to a little patio that everybody had, like grass. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms and bathroom. So I had one of these little bedrooms, and then she comes to me for rent. And I said, well, no, I'm leaving the first thing I can in the morning. I'm going to work. And then after work, I'm zigzagging through stuff. When I came from school, I zigzagged through all the music stores before I went back to the house to be there as late as possible. And then she says, well, you got to pay rent. No, I had no. They pay rent? No, but they're children of God. Well, so
Yeah, but I'm
one day I
children of
had
you.
exactly, there you go. That's what I said. Well, so she had packed a suitcase one day with a big letter of Bible verses, and I did what I could, and you're on your own. I was like 16 and a half years old,
Wow.
and it was like 10 below outside and horrible. So I think I slept in a band bus with like 3 layers of blankets and whatever for a couple of nights. And then inside on the floor with some guy. And then I found my father, who had been away because he wasn't a born again Christian. So they were divorced. And she made it difficult for us to see him and blah, blah, blah. So I hooked up with him. This is kind of like more a story more related to gypsies or black hood ghetto lifestyles. I didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
So I kept writing, composing music. The bass player was very productive, the one that had the record deal going. He went down to the military entertainment office because we had NATO, and it was Norway. It was a long country. There's like a lot of military camps all over. And he went to a commercial artist booking bureau. They made posters. He went to the military, and all of a sudden we had a tour like zigzagging from the Russian border up in northeast down through Norway. And they bought a bus. He bought an old school bus, got a payment plan, made a bunk bed section, and backside, like a 12-meter long Scania or Volvo, something like that. And we were all going, like
Was this a
it was
trio?
very good of getting.
Was this a
Oh
trio?
no. This is a band. This is a band called Rufus. We had 2 singers, one male, one female, and trio was like 2 guitar players. It was like 7 people.
And all the people traveled in the bus and basically
Yeah,
lived in the bus. Oh my God.
and the driver.
For the days.
It was like 8 people.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
$7 food money per day. We could buy bananas and French bread. And he went in with the money, like the cash register of the band, like a
Yeah.
little mini safe,
Yeah.
and bought the daily soup in some road, cafeteria, so we all could eat. And either we slept in the bus or we went to a hotel. No, we had a hotel room once a week where we
Yeah.
could shower.
So
Okay,
apparently
that
where
was
you
from
were
17.
yeah.
Huh?
Apparently where you were working, they didn't actually offer you food. Or maybe they did.
Sometimes they did, sometimes they did not.
Yeah. So, okay, so when this happened from 17 to
From 1972 up until 1976.
wow.
From 74, I started doing other stuff like studio work, studio gigs, studio sessions, um, other engagements like National Theater had a thing. People started calling me. That was really what we felt like we were about, because that was more like a lame musician type who could do a little bit of everything but didn't have his own voice type of thing.
Yeah.
Bread and potato musician.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did it, and after a while, people started, like a guy called Jon Christensen, a drummer, started hanging around me and was in a big place in Oslo called Club 7. It was a very important place for a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
Club CLUB 7. It had a cafeteria in the daytime. It had a theater group. It had library. It had back, rehearsal rooms. You could book yourself.
Yeah.
And every major artist that was on tour from overseas and everywhere came by that place. So we heard everything from Elvin Jones, Al Jarreau, David Simon, that kind of like mid-range commercial things, but also interesting things. Remember the Chicago art example, with this white doctor suits, and a very interesting organ player from Chicago, I think, Webster Lewis, was there in the early 70s. He was also part of Herbie Hancock's bigger band in 80 something. And he died recently, not a long time ago, Webster Lewis. Anyway, I started just to be part of the whole music scene and jazz festivals, and the Norwegian jazz festivals are very prestigious, very beautiful places, fjords, nature, summer, you know. And one day a lady called and said, "Hey, I'm Jan Garbarik's wife."
Huh.
And Jan Garbarik was a saxophone player that everybody knew because he was
It's
part of
like
the
an
Keith Jarrett.
ECM label
Yeah,
artist, right? Huh.
the Keith Jarrett European Quartet.
Yeah.
Basically, Keith Jarrett took Jan Garbarik's band, except the piano player, and used it. Yeah, but that's how things were done.
Yeah.
And that was very beautiful, very lyrical, very non-blues,
Uh-huh.
not the Afro-American preferences. It was more a European preferences for the
Yeah.
harmonics and scales layout. And the drummer there, Jon Christensen, started hanging around me. Hey, how can I play? And I noticed that people around were kind of like, "Are you playing with Jon Christensen?" I said, "Yeah." "But don't you know he's a blah blah blah, very famous?" "Yeah, oh really? Okay." I wasn't in that. I didn't have records.
Yeah.
I wasn't in that, buy that record, listen to that, sit down and listen to it. I was on the go all the time. And because I didn't have that upbringing, I never sat down anywhere and listened to records. Never.
Yeah.
I captured, but so there's one more thing that it's called, I can't remember the word, but it's kind of like I see colors when I hear music.
Oh, yeah.
And so I have a color for each, from C to C. Each note has a color, and each day of the week has a color. So when I was neurotic and couldn't sit by a piano and figure something, I saw colors when I heard music, like the chords I wanted to understand. They presented themselves as a color or a combination of colors, like a D major chord with a 9 in it. D is green and A is red. So A being the fifth of the D, that makes me like a clear green dot, a clear red, and then the black notes, the F sharp is black. But the E is white with a dash of light blue around it, like a cloud and a cartoon, like in Donald Duck. It has a white with a light blue kind of dash in it. So when I see, that's a D major 9. D major 7 with a 9 in it. And so.
Did you say what the C sharp was?
No, the C sharp. The black notes are just black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the C sharp is black too.
Oh.
But I know they're there because of the ambience.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be the same as a B minor 9. A B minor 9 would be more of a, because B for me is gray. So the gray would be dominant. And then I can see the D as a green additional thing. So like A major 7, A major 7, I always add a 9, like a 9 is just a little spice. It can be in the way sometimes, but very rarely. It's very not in the way. It's just opening up a little bit. So the A major 7 with a 9 in it has that the clear blue thing from the E, the grayish from the B, which is a 9, and I might not even play the root chord in the chord, because you play it in the bass. So that's how I voice. I very rarely play the root note in the chord.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a moment and play some of your music, and
Yeah.
I'm going to share the screen, and you can kind of direct us around.
If you don't mind, I have one tune at the SoundCloud. If
you
you
have
can go to SoundCloud, yeah.
Sure.
I'm
But,
sorry, but I made.
Before we move on to that,
Yes.
just let's tell us about what we heard at the beginning. I mean, it's Doug Webb, Rob McDonald, and Marvin Smitty Smith. But when was this? Was this recording from 2014 or?
Yes, it was. So I have a band called Graffiti, which had Dennis Chambers as a drummer, Gary Granger bass, and the Swedish guitar player called Ulf Wakenius, who I played with from the early mid-70s in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
But he got picked up because he played with Nils Henning Ørsted Petersen.
Yeah.
A lot after Nils Henning quit playing with Oscar Peterson. He played for 30 years and he had it. So they had the trio, Nils Henning and Ulf on guitar. Okay, here's a tune on SoundCloud called Never You Wear. Never You Wear. Let's see if you put in search up there. I'm sorry, so Never You Wear and Never You Wear.
Never be where or never?
No, never never, not to be, but never why. Never why, and then where. Instead of everywhere, you put an N in front of it.
Is that right?
Neverywhere.
No, oh, never, neverywhere, like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's the top one. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the first part,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. No, being in LA, I bumped into great musicians, you know, Marvin, there's several great drummers, and Dennis Chambers had problems with some health issues, and I won't go into that, but I had since I was based in LA, due to a grant that I got, long story, so I was experimenting with to see who I could use for overseas touring and this and that, house alternatives and whatever, and be a little active. So I ran into Bunny Brunel. He became a friend through some other people. Bunny was busy recording, and he said, "Oh, that saxophone of Dr. Webb is very good." Oh my God, you know.
Yeah.
So he, I normally, I normally don't work with saxophone players a lot because I kind of want to have that main voice myself. But okay, I thought, okay, let's try. And Doug,
You know what?
some
I'm gonna interrupt here, and you can get a glass of water or something. And I'm gonna play it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more. How's that? So here's
okay, good.
Neverywhere.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, let's try this one.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, let me just say a few
Yeah.
things. So, first of all, this music is really like a huge thing for me personally because when I was in college, I heard Weather Report and Bob Moses and that style was I had been listening to jazz all my life, but more of the old style. And of course, when I was in college, there was a lot of different great pop music going on. I was in Boston, and there was blues and R&B and Motown and all of those things. But this style of music so turned me on. So to hear you do this is like, wow, it's just and yeah, I'm just curious about timing as far as was Weather Report and what you were doing here, was that at the same
Yeah.
time? Did that come later, or it was at the same
Right.
time?
No, I mean, I heard Weather Report. I think it was like a piece called Nubian Sundance
Yeah.
in the early 70s. And it was like amazing combination of rhythm factors and overlaying big lines. It was
Yeah.
so opening up so much, and it aligned me with the classical, the dramatic and the borderlessness of some of the classical music I've been hearing, like Prokofiev or Russian composers and modern Shostakovich, and it just blew my mind. It didn't just the freedom from the boxes,
Yeah.
you know. Oh, are you? Oh, are you? Now we see these almost like congregations of conservatism or whatever you can call it, like reactivism, like you want to stay within a style, and if you're outside that style, you're a traitor, like bebop or modern this and that or cool or whatever. So hearing that from me was liberating and very creative, and I understood that there was a world outside what I've heard so far that appealed to me. I understood it, and
Yeah.
it liberated me. So yeah, that report, and then also pieces and bits and pieces from the ECM catalog, which was also done with the same intention from that guy Manfred Eicher, who was a classical bass player himself, and he he was interested in trying to combine musicians from different places on the planet that had an authenticity without being like a chop producing bop player,
Yeah.
that impressive or whatever. So he was traveling around, and he ended up with Keith Jarrett, I think, presented him on who played a solo concert in a Norwegian jazz festival. It has a funny name when you hear it with American language, linguistic ears. It's called Moldy. It's like crazy name, Molde, and but it's a beautiful town. It's kind of like the Bay Area here, or like maybe Lake Tahoe ish. It's beautiful fjord, ocean, sea, fishing, and the whole community is involved in that jazz festival.
Wow.
And that was the time where you hear Egberto Gismonti. Don't forget him.
Wow.
Part of the ECM. Yeah, Egberto Gismonti, beautiful,
Yeah.
both guitarist and pianist.
Yeah.
Uh,
Great.
some
Purchase music.
some South, yeah. Charlie Hayden became a part of that.
Uh-huh.
Jack
Right.
DeShonette became a part of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, Bob Moses, Paul Motion is on some records, I think. And then you
And
had Ralph Towner in
all the
Oregon.
yeah, all those guys like that are listed in your bio, Miroslav and Terj Ripdahl and I Palle Mikkelborg.
Paulie Mickenborg, a Danish trumpeter.
Yeah. Yeah, there was
Amazing guy. Yeah.
Kenny Wheeler,
So,
I think.
huh?
I think Kenny Wheeler was in
Excuse
there.
me?
I think Kenny Wheeler was in there too, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. But those were like older guys. I was this young guy that they heard that had something personal. So I was all of a sudden I was surrounded by these guys, like Jon Christensen, the drummer, was the first who started because I played a lot of the gigs at the Club 7. And in between tours, he would play with Enrico Rava on tour, Italian trumpeter. He would go out with different bands. And in the meantime, he would hang out and ask if he could join and play with me. I said, sure. And sometimes I didn't feel he was the right drummer. But, people came from Boston, from Berkeley, that educational thing in Boston, over to Oslo, Norway, to try to, and stood outside the studio that they recorded this Keith Jarrett and younger Barik, Polemic, Paul Danielsson, the bass player, Swedish, and Jon Christensen in the studio called first Arne Bendixen. That was a guy who later they took over, they sold the studio, it became Rainbow Studios in Oslo. Why was those records ground, like Jesus, my words, groundbreaking records recorded there was two reasons. Number one, the tickets, the travel budget was lower. You can have one guy come from the United States to Oslo instead of three guys over there. But they also happened to find a very amazing and unique Steinway piano in that studio that Keith Jarrett just loved. And that was a hard thing to please him.
Huh.
But he loved that piano. So they recorded.
Wow, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you a little. I mean, everything you're saying is very interesting, but yeah, I mean, as far as the development of, the history of jazz, I mean, this particular spot that you're talking about, this moment in time, is so intriguing. And it's not like I just started getting intrigued about it. Like I said, I was intrigued when I first heard it, and pretty much because of what you said, it was the boundaries, it really opened up. There was like you were talking about sensations and emotions before. And when I think about where I came out of and why that music affected me so much, it was like a breaking out of a prison. It was so open.
Right,
and
exactly.
Yeah. And maybe that was reflective of
Think
the
about
time.
Joe Salvador. Yes. And that's where you meet, that's when the magic happens. And I think that's where the jazz musicians were trying to, the ones that I was connected to, and coming from my background myself, to break out of something that actually made you physically and mentally sick or bound, or So look at the guy called Joseph Savonur.
Yes.
Joseph Savonur came out of Austria, and he grew up in a time where there were Hitler Jugends. They had to. So my father's side is, strangely enough, it's just a funny thing, but my father's side is German. That's my last name, Graf. And so my grandfather came out of Southeast Germany. He survived the First World War, being a coach on a Tannenwagen with horses. And he was demonstrating knitting machines, German industry, household machines, and bigger commercial machines. He came up to Oslo, nice little Bay Area town, and he liked it there, and he settled there. I had a family there, 4 siblings. My father's the youngest. But so I had this hearing that him trying to speak Norwegian, very, very hard accent. And the mentality of order and discipline, which was common sense to me. Finally, I saw a different way of living than my mother's neurotic hallelujah shouting and nothing happening, No meals, no order, no this and that, less of foreseeability. And so in my father's side of the family, there were different rules and different traditions. Though my father was absent because there was a problem, he couldn't see us for a while. She would make problems, blah, 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 blah. But my main connection to my grandfather was very, very solid. And I would love to go and sit next to him when he had his lunch. He would share his sausage, like a thick German sausage, and the brown bread.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of, when I saw The Godfather and this guy, Marlon Brando, and the little boy out in the bushes in the scenes where Marlon Brando or The Godfather dies, you know,
Yeah.
that was the vibe I had. Grandfather had big jaws, big mustache, and spoke not so much, but when he spoke, it was hard. It was like on point and a very hard accent. So, you know, Paspo, when he would do this, it was important, like the Zigeuner down. Paspo and Zigeuner, that means those bandits. Zigeuner, gypsy, it's a term. Those people over there, Paspo, the Zigeuner down. And he would have whatever, but the peace and this also the feeling of a download of some type of spiritually, historically fabric that I got from him. It's the same feeling I had. I actually met Joe Salvador a couple of times. The same thing. We both stopped and kind of looked at each other 2 times in Norway. And we sat down and talked for like you and I are talking right now. He talked, we just started talking. And he said, I play acoustic piano too. And here comes the point, the link to what you were just saying. I play acoustic piano too. And I sat there and I couldn't believe he said that to me. Poor guy. I thought, are you kidding me? Don't you think I know that? You're Joe Salvador, remember? All of a sudden I had like a Chris Farlow type of moment. You know who Chris Farlow is?
Yeah.
Fat, silly, but kind of crazy funny. When
Yeah.
he interviewed Paul McCartney, I said, "Hey, you Paul, remember when you were in the Beatles?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." Oh, that was awesome. That type of thing. But I talked to Joe Salvador and he said, acoustic piano didn't do it for me, man. He did something more. Because he played the accordion when he was a little boy.
Yeah.
He would play parties and he would go out and play parties. So he had a big band preference when he played.
Yeah.
The chord.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So then he got a scholarship and he went to Berkeley and it was picked up by Nat Adley or, the Cannibal Adley.
Yeah.
And he had Horace Silver as his big hero.
Yeah.
He played bebop creatively and beautifully. And one day, some black musicians told him, like, "Hey man, why are you playing like that?" I said, "Well, this is my favorite, like, well, he's already there. He's already doing it." So he got a shock and he stopped playing props. From that day, he became more well known. He took a chance. He stepped outside of that. Look how many chops I can play. Look what I can do. And he established Weather Report. I think maybe after he played with Miles, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't pay too much attention to that Miles period because I think it was more like a free zone, kindergarten, breaking down, whatever. Get away from kind of like people squatting a house type of thing. There's nothing really. There were some beautiful moments, but I think that led to the establishment of other things that was great, like
Right.
Weather Report.
Right. Yeah, that's really amazing. Hey, my friend Dan Davila is here, and he posted a beautiful song with your trio, "My Intentions" and Zowie song.
Oh yeah,
So I'm gonna look at that because Dan usually has very good taste.
Mm. Mm. This is from Norway.
Okay.
A few years ago. Yeah. It's very cold. I think it's like 11 degrees below outside.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, that's why you're inside.
Exactly. Okay, Mathisen bass, great bass player. Erik Smith drums.
Sounds great. to actually stop because I don't want to go the whole 14 minutes as much as I
Right.
would. But that's incredible. So who are these musicians?
Mm. Drummer, guy called Erik Smith, super talented, all-round musician. One of the few I can say, can you play less like Dave Weckl? And who's a great guy and great drummer, but sometimes Erik Smith is his name. Erik Smith,
Yeah.
wonderful, 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 over talented musician. He plays piano like Oscar Peterson.
Really?
Yeah. And he doesn't, I just want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I can tell him my ideas because I have a strong drummer thing inside of me. I have a very strong drum thing going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like I'm playing the wrong instrument, but it's all part of the whole group thing. So whatever. But he's one of the few I could say, can you play a little more, like less rigid, like less locked in like that, and more, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. He's never getting offended. At least he's not showing me.
He's an interesting drummer because, I mean, this situation is not a super easy situation. I mean, it's,
Right.
the bass player is playing melody a lot, and then you're playing melody, and then he's yeah, it's really interesting. He's
Building
really,
it up.
yeah, he's very good.
Agree. And the bass player is called Mathisen.
Uh-huh.
It's a funny situation because he's part of a sibling group, like they're brothers.
Oh,
I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 brothers and 1 sister.
uh-huh.
And they like the Dalton brothers, the cartoon that they could draw faster than their own shadow.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's very well educated. He's been to the Norwegian schools of music, the college, the high school with the music, with the college, after that. Then he went to Berkeley.
Yeah.
And he's a very serious guy. He takes things very seriously. He's a great group guy, team worker. I've been in Norway and I don't have car or whatever. I had to borrow equipment here and there. He came pick me up and go do this and load in, and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And he learned the music and was on top of everything. So that's the trio I've been working with in Norway since I think 2015, 16. He initiated a video filming of a concert at the little place in Oslo called the Olsen Cafe. Packed it. It's in the suburbs up on the east side of Oslo where I grew up. And very good sound engineer, Olav Johansen, who came and Pro Tools and combination with video cameras and recorded everything. So we did the live DVD release of that, plus another concert where we recorded as a different take on the tunes and variations. So it's a CD and a DVD in one package.
Really beautiful. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
great. Do you and speaking of what Zawinul said, do you play acoustic, or do you like to play acoustic or not?
Yes, I do. I actually do. There's a different kind of, like, I put myself in a different space and room when I do that.
Yeah.
But I understand what he says. He said that the acoustic piano wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So I'm also like that. I like that orchestration, the orchestrator thing, because the synthesizers have so many options, and some of them speaks to you. The sound speaks to you, makes you creative.
Yeah. Yeah, like some of that I was wondering actually if the sound came first or the melody came first, or maybe they both come together to you.
Sometimes, like if you say that there's something called a tonal statement, there's something you want to paint. There's an emotional thing. There's a message to somebody you love. It's something like reassurance, like Toots Thielemans said in the Brazilian music. There's a place or he said his favorite place in music was between a smile and a tear. And
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Smile and a tear. Wow.
yeah,
I can really relate to that. I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so though you can portray something melancholic and sad, you can always have that hope in the horizon. But despite all of that, is boom, 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 boom. So um, the melody sometimes, when I'm experimenting,
Yeah.
I've been experimenting with like having a line in a key, and the key speaks to me, it has a certain energy, and then I let the last melody note, like on the Everywhere tune, I play dee dong dong as an A flat, and then it's an a minor third, and an F minor. Then I go down, low, da, and go down to E major, down, low, da, 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 dee, da. So it's opening up to a major thing from an F minor, which is a melancholic key, to a hope. And then I walk down and I try to make sense of the last note in the melody becomes a major or an important note in the next chord.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not scattered. I mean, then,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a flow. There's
Then
a
now it becomes,
horizontal flow to it. Yeah. And of course you're describing it right now. It's kind of like analyzing music after the fact, I'm guessing. Like in the moment, you're just doing it
right.
because of your emotions and your feelings and creativity. But then afterwards you can go, oh, look at, I went to a major chord or I went to a minor chord, right?
I do that together.
You think
So I
about it
want to
while
say
it's happening.
something.
Yeah.
I it's not it's more awareness. It's not thinking so much. It's
Yeah.
more like an awareness. What is this energy saying?
All
Is
right.
this the energy I want? Then I adjust it to what I want. Oh wow, to be aware, to kind of have an overview of what I'm doing without, the whole thing. When you've done all the thinking, you've done all the practicing of the scales, you know where you are.
Yeah.
But when you put these pieces together like a Lego thing, oh, look, okay, this is saying what I wanted to say.
Right.
Sometimes that could be a surprise too, but it's kind of like an integrated process.
Right. I know what you mean. Some like when I like my writing the best, that's where I am. I'm not the greatest piano player, but uh it doesn't really matter because if I start with the melody or I start with the harmony, it's if I hook into that space, then it seems like the whole song is in this kind of tone or mode. I wrote several songs, like how you write kind of a series of music for a week or two if you're writing a lot.
Mhm.
And I wrote several songs that were kind of folky. They were simple, but they were extremely living in this particular tone and from the beginning to the end. One song I wrote about my sisters. I had twin sisters who died, and they were 4 years old.
Oh,
We used to play and sing together, right? Because one played piano.
oh,
It was a long, long history of making music together. And this one day, I was just kind of reminded of them and how it felt, and I felt like talking about it. And it came out in this song that was so complete. It was a satisfying creation for me.
I think that you describe a very important thing that we don't think about sometimes, a subconscious pregnancy a creative pregnancy. There's something that are coming up from your inner depth. And when it surfaces, it's almost kind of like almost done. You just have to let it out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you need to deliver that entity.
Yeah. 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 But this is a great conversation because you really you have been so aware of these things, it seems like, in your life, and you are right now. What are you doing these days, by the way?
You know, I came up to Bakersfield because I lost a big tour with the band Graffiti that had Dennis Chambers in it. And he collapsed. He almost died.
Yeah.
2 weeks before our tour was supposed to start, he was found bleeding and unconscious in the hotel room in Alicante on tour with Mike Stern. And we had an opening, like, the dream tour for a band like this. And for me,
Yeah.
as a person like Ronnie Scott's,
Yeah.
4 nights at the Blue Note, Milan, Italy,
Mm.
Norway, Sweden, couple of nights in each country, Germany, mid Europe, then 3 nights in Tel Aviv, Israel,
Huh.
2 nights in Madrid, Spain, and some other. We were waiting for a couple of big festivals to kind of get in. And long story short, I was so proud and so depending on that tour financially and everything. So when it didn't happen, I couldn't just book another drummer, though I may have been able to, but the lineup was so
Perfect.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the names, the booking, the promoters, so happy with the lineup and the names and everything. So that's the backside of putting all my eggs in one basket when there's names that the promoters want. Very, very devastating when it doesn't happen. But anyway, so I came back and, I got a phone call from Tony Moore. You know Tony, right? The drummer.
No.
Okay,
Tony.
great guy, black drummer, been playing with, that um, um, smooth jazz cruises and a little bit Jeff Lorber and this and that. And he's a great drummer, he's a great person.
Yeah.
And he called me and said, "Hey, have you heard about Dennis?" I said, I thought he was going to say he was dead, because it was a couple of incidents before where he was in very bad condition. Anyway, so that was in 2014. And I had to cancel the tour. I had to say, well, let's get back to it. Let's put it in the freezer or table it until he can come back, or we can renegotiate and schedule with another drummer. And I lost a lot of money and all my LA activities at the time. I had like three, maybe four students, and they were all well-doing, grown people, and IT engineers and lawyers and CEOs and whatever. So I had like a good deal per
Yeah.
per lesson and per this and that, and they paid me for 1 month up front, and if they didn't want to continue, they ended it and whatever, blah blah blah. So I had plus some studio work and some this and that. So I had like a decent income per month.
Yeah.
But I've told everybody that I was going on that tour. I'm sorry for the long versions of the story, but I'll so no. When the tour didn't happen, nobody was there for me. They're like, oh, they have made all the plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was broke. Basically, I came up to Bakersfield for personal. I had a girlfriend or personal relationship that was kind of compartmentalized for the weekends because she worked in Bakersfield and came down to the beach the weekends, and I stayed there and I did my work in LA. But we had some type of, companionship thing. I came up to Bakersfield because I knew it was cheaper to live. I could kind of hang on, and it's a third of the prices in LA when
Yeah.
it comes to housing and everything. Anyway, Bakersfield, as you know, is an interesting little dusty countryish community, and that has their own life jazz festival, the jazz classes at the university, and then the jazz workshop. But unfortunately, the festival now is canceled. And during the COVID times, everybody had to find alternative ways of living meaningful from day to day,
Yeah.
including the jazz workshop.
Yeah, right.
So I'm here right now. I don't know if I'm going back to when. I'll probably go back to Norway. I have adult kids. I want to see them more. There are airports and we can fly here and there.
Yeah.
But
So what are you
I
doing?
love California.
What are you doing with yourself right these days? Are you teaching online? Are you writing? Are you recording anything? What do you do?
Excuse me, I drifted off. First, I broke my hand.
You did?
It's a year ago. It healed a year ago. I had a Baptist. Somebody offered me a Black Baptist church gig here every Sunday. Very interesting. I learned, harmony,
Wow.
grooves. Very good musicians. Very good people. But then I broke my hand in an accident. I fell. I'd reached out and I cracked my wrist, and I had to be very careful. So, but in the meantime, I submit some music to a music library
Yeah.
that is sometimes asking me for music. I have been in a dark place because of the hand and whatever, and so I haven't been very creative, I feel, but I have been picking it slowly up again now.
Yeah.
So I am getting back into the piano, just like physically
Yeah.
in touch with it, because it's like sometimes I have this feeling. Sometimes I get alienated with the instrument. I can't. The bass player told me the same thing. His bassist was standing in a corner in his room, and every time he passes it, he starts to cry.
Oh.
Or he tried to take the bass out of its cover, a bag, and
Yeah.
play alone in the room, and he just started crying.
Oh.
So to get more on the light side, I am getting back, Cathy. This talking to you now helps.
Good.
It's connecting me to something meaningful.
Yeah.
And like why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Because it's so yeah, I'm actually doing a little recording project now with a bassist here in town called Al Miller. He has some beautiful tunes, and I'm recording it for him and harmonizing it, and so that's a nice little thing we're doing.
Interesting. I'd actually like to create a little something with you, because talking about this kind of music and hearing your music makes me curious to actually sing with this kind of style. I mean, I have a few different styles myself. I can tell you more about this, on a phone call, but seeing that is what really turned me on, that style. I'm curious actually how to make music with that, because I don't think I really have ever done that. I've just admired it.
Okay.
So it'd be fun to create, and maybe it would help you, feel more connected also.
Yeah. Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, it's this is such I mean, I don't have to, I'm talking to the chorus as they say, but Everybody knows this. Everybody's felt such a weird year. It's like science fiction, it's so
Uh,
many different things and definitely emotions. Like I actually had a little birthday lunch last week with a few friends, and one woman that was the first live hang besides her grandchildren that she had done in the year. And she looked very like white, sitting there at first. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Well, no, I'm not really sure how I feel right now, because of, haven't been out." And as we went on, we had a great hang, and by the end it was like totally normal again. But it has brought up all these subtle things like walking by your bass, like you would
yeah,
normally think that you would walk by the bass and pick it up or touch it, but there's this kind of a like a like an affinity, a broken affinity with it, you know.
yeah.
And I think all artists I've been through that at least a little bit, and some more for various reasons. But yeah, it's really a trip with what's happened this year for people who were out. I remember one person in the very beginning told me like they were connected to orchestras, right? And so some of the orchestra people were really at a loss because why? Because I am an orchestra violinist. That's what I am. And so there's no more orchestra. So what am I? I'm nothing, you know?
Right,
So
right.
yeah,
I've gone to a couple of yogis, the Indian
yeah,
wise men, you know, but I just stumbled upon it because I've had to think about different dimension in life myself at a very early age. Like what is, who are we as a human being? And they say you are more than your mind.
right.
You're more than your spirit.
Yeah,
You're more than your soul. You're more than your body.
yeah,
So when you go into what do we do, and when we spend so many hours doing something of meaningfulness, we become what we do, right? That's like another thing. The Japanese world, you become the violin, you become the music. You are you are not observing what you do from a distance. You're so in it that you are what you do.
yeah,
So when the doing stops, then that's the challenge. What do we do now? Who are we now? And you run into people that are more surviving as a doing from hour to hour, like more um, what the traditional education system was aimed to please during the industrial age establishment, that you can't do anything wrong. To
right.
do to do mistakes is wrong because you learn how to operate that machinery, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
and there's only one right way, and then you got a job. That's it. So when to think about how we can, I mean, when you're surrounded by them and you kind of become, you have to answer for maybe two people that I say, well, why can't you become a night stalker at once? Get another job. That's what we have to do. We have to go, no, but you don't, you haven't spent 20,000 hours becoming a violinist before that.
yeah,
So it's hard when you start to doubt yourself. Like, who am I to sit here and think that pressing some keys is so meaningful? And it's hard to lose your perception of here's a very important video that I want you to see. Please see that. There's a guy called Ken Robinson,
okay,
Sir Ken Robinson, on TED Talks. Ken Roberts, British guy, educator.
I think I've heard of him.
About, yeah,
I've heard of him.
he
TED
talks
Talks?
about the lady. Yes.
Okay.
And he talks about how our society has established this hierarchy of important things and less important things.
Yeah.
And art always comes in the bottom.
Yeah.
First, math, left brain, da 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 da, whatever. And he talks about a little girl who was in class and was seen as a nuisance, a disturbance. She couldn't sit still. And we learned that we have to sit still and use our brain and remember stuff. And
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
So he says the little girl couldn't sit still. The teacher at the end was so horrified and so troubled that she wanted the parents to take her to a doctor. The parents took her to a doctor, but luckily they found a doctor with a wide perspective who talked to the girl for a little bit, and then he asked the parents to go out on the outside and wait, and he put on the radio, and he found like a rhythmic, like a dance music station, and she started dancing. She started dancing right away, and very good moves. Like after a little while and more talk, he called the parents in and said, "There's nothing wrong with your girl. She's a dancer. That means she has to move to think." And fast forward, she has to move to think. Take her to a dance school. They took her to a dance school, and the little girl met other little boys and girls that had the same condition. They have to move to think. And when you see kids, especially in more like African cultures or different cultures where they let the kids be playing without all this worrying and whatever protection, when they learn something, they sing and dance about it. I got a new doll. They make up. So creativity and fantasy is so important to not be compartmentalized. So she started at the dance school. Later, when she was done, she met a guy called Andrew Lloyd Webber and made a piece called Cats.
Oh my God.
That's her.
Wow.
Today, she's a multimillionaire. She has dance schools all over the world.
Wow.
Because back then, when she went to the doctor, they didn't know that he could have HDD, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And if it was today, she would probably been told to sit down and take her medication.
Yeah, I know. I always see people like that I think about. It's like, yep, it's a good thing that this guy grew up, he's in his 60s or something, because if he had been in his 40s, he wouldn't be the same guy. He would have had medication. Well, you're dead. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, your Bakersfield Jazz Workshop starts July 6th. LM Booker's here.
Yeah.
LM.
I know. Laura, she's a great, colorful person here in Bakersfield, and great singer.
Yeah.
Very, very deep. She can sing like in the intervals, and so yeah. So it starts. I've talked to Steve Eisen. He's always trying to get people to,
Yeah.
come down and do something.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
you and I, let's continue. If you want to call me and talk about something,
Yeah.
please do.
I will.
Have I been acceptable, or have I been too scattered, flying all over the place?
I think you've been acceptable. Actually, no, you talked a lot, but if I wanted to say something, you stopped, which is always a good thing, for a talker. And also what you were saying was really interesting. So yeah, very interesting. Like I said, I don't really recall any other story like yours. It's a very unique, it's a unique story. And yeah, it's just it's great. It's a great story. And I love your music.
Thank you. I was thinking before we started,
Oh,
should I just be more linear, like years, names,
yeah.
projects, or should I go into the little background stuff? And when I did, it felt natural. You didn't stop me, and you. I feel that you would have taken some type of active, to steer it into where you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
With all due respect, I don't think that's my business to kind of be an obstacle, you know, for what you want to do. So I get it. Interesting.
I like to find out. I probably teach the same way. I don't. I mean, I have my tools that I can offer, but I also like to find out what the person's point of view is, where they're coming from, and be sensitive to that. And I like talking to people like that too. I want to know what you're thinking, and it's interesting to know what your point of view is. One thing we did not talk about, and could you tell us a little bit about it, is your stay in Brazil, because I could just
Oh yeah,
imagine that you probably had a pretty intense time there. It was a year or something. Is that correct?
yeah. It was short. It was like 6 months. But my first wife, who beautiful, intelligent, very beautiful person, she unfortunately got postpartum depression after child number two. But she was at the time she was a she chose to become a flight attendant. And long story, so I got cheap tickets. There was a Brazilian kind of invention in Oslo in the early 80s. There was a couple coming up from Rio called Cristina and Claudio Latini. And they had a percussion player, there was a guitar player and his wife, and more political, northern politics, northern European politics, and this and that. And so they had a percussion player with them called Celio de Cavallo. And Celio, I picked him out and had used him with my trio in the place I was playing at the time. And something felt very familiar, like emotions, heart, the way we think, whatever. Maybe because of my background. And anyway, I went to him. I went with him to Brazil in 1983, just for 2 weeks. During that time, I jumped up on the stage and jammed with the band that was playing in the club. The bass player, that was a guy called Artur Maya. Artur Maya played with everybody. Ivan Lins, Javan, Gilberto Gil,
Uh-huh.
and he had his own band called Camarigato. They would play kind of like what I'm doing, but with a Brazilian touch.
Huh.
The Battery Portage kind of fusion kind of thing, and the Brazilian rhythms are very intoxicating. I needed to study that. So I was there, I jammed. Artur and I became friends, and we agreed on let's do something and plan something and come back and do a series of like a little project in Rio. At the time, Renato Neto, the keyboard player that
Yeah,
later ended up with Prince, him,
yeah, I
he
know.
was part of that thing. Yeah. And he was part of that circle around Artu and all of these people in Rio. So next time I came, we made a plan. We'd come, we record something, we play him for a month. And when I came, it was all in the air. He hadn't done a lot of planning, but I remember we were outside Renato Neto's apartment, and our two would scream out, "Hey, Renato, Joaquin, Norway, teclados, you know." So he was like taking a gig that Renato was supposed to have, giving it to me, and asked to borrow Renato's keyboards at the same time. Crazy. And I saw it like, oh, whatever. I two in my outfit. Fuck, you know, like, yeah, okay. Take the keyboards. We had to go down in the basement, the cellar or something, and open up some dusty and moldy things and drag his keyboards out from a gig to do a gig that he should have had.
And were you in Cuba as well?
Yeah.
How long?
Cuba, 2004, 2005. Long story. Cubans come to Norway, blonditas, los vikingas, as they say, the blonde, academic, nice girls in Norway and Sweden, whatever, that study the world and wants to dance salsa and all of that. They go to Cuba, boy meets girl, and sometimes they stay. And there's a lot of Cubans in Norway. They come up. They also been part of the East European scene because of the communist relations to Cuba. And blah, blah, blah. So yeah, the Cubans came to me and said, "Hey, Haakon, you come play with us. You have the right, jazzista. Muy importante. Disciplina. La clave, da, and the montuno, da. So I was actually trained by a soccer player who was Cuba's national athlete of the year in 1990. He wasn't a musician, but he played like at the countryside. He was a guajiro from Pinar del Rio, but he was good. He could sing clave with his foot on the pedal, congas, and sing like Oscar de Leon, bum, 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 knew all the songs. And he didn't have any musical per se understanding of harmony plus this and minus that. He said, no, contorno, clave. So I learned my basics from him. And I also ended up playing left-hand bass with acoustic bass sound on my upper synthesizer, while I'm playing montunos and piano at the lower.
Right.
So that was a very interesting time. And Cuba, then I went to Cuba.
Yeah.
And with some Cubans living.
I'm sure this is a longer story, and I don't actually want to, kind of end because it's about 2 hours. That we don't have to like chop it off, but I can tell there's a lot more information here. This needs to have a number 2. Thanks for hanging out, and thanks for being so open and sharing with your life and your perspective. Really appreciate it a lot.
Just to look at Cuba.
Yeah.
I think I understand Cubans because they also had to live under a regime where listening to all the types of music that was part of the program was very dangerous.
Right. Right.
Death. Yeah. I mean, so
yeah.
I have Cubans, my brothers and sisterhood type of feeling, and I can relate to the risks they have to take to go from what they were allowed to listen to what they weren't allowed to. But anyway, this has been also appreciated. Thanks for letting me being so random. though it's just, though it wasn't random, it was just all over the place. Cathy, thank you.
It was on a flow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. It was really a great interview and great to hear your music. Yeah, I'm sure you have more fans who have listened today, and so thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank
And for those of you
Thank
listening,
you.
you're welcome. For those of you listening and wanting to know who's here the rest of the week, tomorrow is another live interview with a singer from New York who's really good, Gabrielle Stravelli. And then Thursday through Sunday, I have from my archives. So I have Michael Steffens, great drummer and author. Friday, Sherry Williams, who's singer kind of akin to Nancy Wilson to me. And Saturday, Tom Meek. He's a editor, writer. He's the editor for LAjazz.com, and he's a writer. And then Sunday, a guitarist named Jacques Lejour, who's from LA, who's a great guitarist and a very kind of outspoken, opinionated person, which is cool. And then we start again next week. But and if you want to know who's on, coming up, just go to my website. And let's see. Oh yeah, for those of you in LA, this Saturday night, I have a gig at the conference room, and it's first set I'll play, and then we have a jam session. It's really a nice room. It's in Playa Vista, and it's outdoors. Yeah, it's outdoors, and there's a great band. It's Dave Arnay on piano, and
What's the percussion player's name again? Is he the one who kind of started that?
Well, Aron Safarti is the drummer for me, and then the bass player is John Leftwich, and it's a great band, really musical band. So if you feel comfortable, those of you in LA, if you feel comfortable about coming out and sitting in, it's a really good band, and they have great food. And please call to reserve ahead because it is a limited seating. So, but I'd love to see you all there. It's really fun. It's great. So that's it.
Break a leg.
Thanks, Haakon.
Don't break a leg.
Okay, I won't. Thank you so much.
No, I actually wish I could swing by because I have to go to LA to do a dental procedure, and I've seen that the conference room gigs all the time. It's a 2-hour drive for me, so
yeah,
I have to, if I can find a solution to crash somewhere, I might come over and just,
cool.
Check it out. Yeah, we'll see. But thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. My
website is, my whole name is just a little strange. It's HaakonGraf, Haakon Graf, and then music without any dots or anything.com. HaakonGrafmusic.com.
Great. I'll be listening.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Cathy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.